And now I'm very happy that we have Harold Meyerson here with us. I hadn't known that Harold was into public banking until I heard him speak in Philadelphia. So a shout out to the Philadelphia folks here.
Public banking.
Harold Meyerson is well known here in D.C. for his weekly op-ed columns in the Washington Post, providing a breath of fresh air as he writes from a left perspective for the paper. He's also editor-at-large of the American Prospect, founded by Robert Reich and others, and is one of the magazine's chief political writers. His articles on politics, labor, the economy, foreign policy, American culture have appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The New Republic, The Nation, The New Statesman. In his hometown of L.A., he was columnist at large for the L.A. Weekly, the nation's largest metropolitan weekly paper, winning numerous awards. He's been a frequent guest on television and radio talk shows, including hosting the weekly NPR show Real Politics. All in all, he's been something of a Los Angeles institution. We hope you're a D.C. institution as well. He's an avowed democratic socialist and says he's one of only two that he encounters during daily rounds through the nation's capital. The other, of course, being Senator Bernie Sanders. He's vice chair of the National Political Committee of the Democratic Socialists of America. Finally, I should mention that he was the keynote speaker at, I mentioned that already, in Philadelphia. He currently shares his time between Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. We're delighted he can be with us here in D.C. this evening. Please join us in welcoming Harold Meyerson.
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, this is the second time I've been at a conference or a panel on public banking, despite the fact that I actually know very little about it. The Philadelphia invitation completely took me off guard. But one reason I go to these things is I learn a great deal, as I have from tonight's panel. So consider me one of you. There were so many things here tonight that I knew nothing about that now I do. But I am going to presume on Ruth's hospitality and that of some of you who may have read a column of mine to begin with a story dealing with sort of the larger banking system in the United States, since I know something about that, though nowhere on the level that Nomi does. And put yourself back in time to probably the bleakest economic winter the United States has ever faced, 1932-33. Franklin Roosevelt has been elected president, but he has not yet taken office. Presidents were inaugurated in those days in March, not January. And he is putting together his cabinet. And we learn from the diaries of Raymond Moley, who was his chief brain truster, particularly on economic policy during that time, what was going through Roosevelt's head as he was trying to figure out who his Treasury Secretary should be. And Moley was telling him that Roosevelt knew that there were a lot of people arguing for the Virginia Senator Carter Glass, who later authored the eponymous, is the word, Glass-Steagall Act, which separated investment banking from the kind of banking you and I mainly do. But that there was a hitch here, which is that Glass wanted an official from J.P. Morgan to be his deputy secretary. So Roosevelt thought about this. He thought this over. And then he gave a really interesting answer, which I'm not going to give you now, just to hold your attention and be a tease. I'm going to give it at the end of the talk. So in the largest sense, the United States and Great Britain have gone down the path of having the financial sector, the banks that Nomi talked about, and other financial institutions, hedge funds and private equity in this country, really dominate the whole of the economy, very much in contrast, for I think the reasons we heard tonight, to the German economy. And this financial domination, the growth of which Nomi has described, is evident in so many ways. Let me give you one example. I was in this discussion about a week ago with some of the, I think, really most creative union leaders in the country, some of the best labor economists, a few other folks, some labor law experts, former NLRB members, on what the hell to do about the decline of worker power, the decline of unions in this country. And I pointed out at one point that when the National Labor Relations Act was passed in 1935, giving workers the right to collective bargaining, there was at least one sector of the American economy that really was pushing for this, and other Roosevelt reforms like Social Security. That was mass market retail, which wanted customers to have more money in their pockets. So Filene's, as in Filene's Basement, Macy's, headed by Jesse Strauss, they had all been really lobbying for years and helping work out plans to do this kind of distributional shift in income, which required giving workers more power and so on. And the depressing thought I brought to that gathering, and I always like to share my depressing thoughts widely, so I'll bring it here as well, was that I cannot identify a sector of American business today that would support really significantly giving American workers more power. That's not the business model of American business anymore. Workers are costs, and even if the individual CEO wants to do this, there is the mantra of shareholder value. There is a return of investment that is far more important than the welfare of your community, than the welfare of your workers, than the welfare of the United States. And I think at the top of the reasons why this is the dominance of the so-called investment community, or more broadly, more simply, Wall Street, putting pressure on these companies to do nothing. Lately, I mean, it's become the reductio ad absurdum. Lately, we have the so-called activist shareholder. What a euphemism. The activist shareholder, that's who CEOs are bargaining with, not their own workers. They're saying, you know, okay, let me keep my own job, and I will, you know, downsize here, offshore there. This has been going on for some time. It's just that, as I said, activist shareholders have reduced this function to a kind of absurd and very visible level. Its visibility is the only thing about it that is remotely positive. But if we look at the German example that we've had explained to us, I think that helps explain one of the fundamental differences between our economy and the German one. You know, of all the anomalies that you look at, there is this. As you pointed out, Germany has 1/4 the population of the United States, yet it has, you know, a larger volume of exports. And it is the largest exporting country that has the largest trade balance on the planet, and we, of course, are the largest importing country on the planet with the largest trade deficit. Now, there are all kinds of reasons for that. In the case of German exceptionalism, not all of them great. I mean, part of this is the way in which the role that Germany has taken in the larger European economy is as the really kind of taking a model that other European countries can't particularly follow, and also exploiting the advantage given the economy by the euro, which is valued less than the Deutschmark would be if the euro did not exist. But there's another reason too, related to the kind of public banking institutions that we heard about this evening. And that is that they do fund these small and medium-sized enterprises, and they fund something called the Mittelstand, which are the small manufacturers of Germany, which are the real backbone of the German economy. And this is a local thing. The local savings bank knows the local manufacturers. These businesses did not get offshore. They did not go out of business like half of the state of Ohio and half of the state of Michigan and half of the state of Indiana and Pennsylvania did once corporations, manufacturing corporations in this country were told that they really needed to cut their costs and have the stuff made in China. Let's talk about today, again, financial domination and China. One of the more fascinating stories of the last 2 days has been the visit of Chinese President Xi to Britain, in which, you know, Britain now has its own open door policy, the ostensible name of the U.S. policy towards China 110 years ago. Britain has now in that they want China to come in and invest in all kinds of enterprises, including helping them build a nuclear plant. This has tended to make most of Britain's allies, including the United States, nervous for reasons both good and bad. The valid reason is China is not necessarily a friend of democracy. Let's just state that at the outset. But this is driven in part by the fact that China has decided that London, the city as it's called, their version of Wall Street, will be their entree to global currency markets, that they can do their business there. And the city in Britain carries, if anything, as much, if not more, political weight than Wall Street has here in Washington.
Absolutely.
We had this version of this, by the way, when the entire financial community was at the core of the effort to pass permanent normal trade relations with China back in 2001, which greatly accelerated the offshoring of the kind of businesses that survived and thrive in Germany, the offshoring of all those suppliers and manufacturers, and some manufacturing itself, to China because it was cheaper. So that's some of the downside of financial domination, and I could go through this at greater length, but won't. Second point, unrelated to the first point, and I don't have a transition here.